want to deal with the phrase today. It's such a common phrase, but I think that in many ways we don't understand it. Jesus Christ as Lord. Now, how many times have you heard that? You see, a first century Greek speaker would have had a whole lot more packaging into that phrase. We hear it so often, it just kind of rolls off our tongue and we don't think about it. So I want to take just a minute to look at each of those words and their implications and what we're affirming when we say, I believe Jesus is Lord, or Jesus Christ as Lord. First of all is the word Christ. Now, you know the word Christ is the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew word Messiah, which means an anointed one. In the Old Testament, prophets, priests, and kings were anointed. Now, basically, it's a way of God's calling and God's equipping for an assigned task. Did you know John Calvin, when he wanted to write the life of Jesus, he went to Hebrews 1, where it says Jesus is prophet, priest, and king, and he based his outline, his book, on those three things. Well, Jesus fulfills all three Old Testament anointed offices in himself. He's a combination of all of those aspects. I guess the one that surprises me is Jesus is priest and Messiah. But think of Hebrews, where he's the high priest. No. That's an amazing thing. He's of the Lion of Judah, but he's the priest after the order of Melchizedek. It's wonderful. I also want to talk about Jesus. Now, Jesus is not Hebrew name. Hebrew is Joshua. Jesus is Aramaic. And by the way, there are no J's in Hebrew. These are all Y's. Now, we know that what this name meant from the angels naming Jesus in Matthew 1:21. You shall call his name Jesus, because he will save his peoples from their sins. Now, the word Joshua and Jesus is a J or a Y plus a vowel, which is an abbreviation for Yahweh, the covenant name for God, from the Hebrew verb to be, and the name salvation, the Hebrew prophet Hosea. So you have to put a verb in there. Yahweh brings salvation. Yahweh is salvation. You got to put a verb. But that's what Jesus meant, and that describes what his life is like. Now, the word Lord, very interesting. This is the Greek word kurios. It means owner, manager, husband, Lord. The Jews were afraid to pronounce the covenant name for God because they thought they would break the commandment that says don't take his name in vain. So every time they would read their scriptures and they would come to YHWH, no vowels are there, they would substitute a Hebrew word, Adon, which means husband, owner, master, Lord. Now, if you want my Lord, it's the famous phrase Adonai. So here we have Jesus being called Lord. I think the New Testament authors affirm the deity of Christ in several ways. They take Old Testament titles for God and apply them to Jesus. Lord is certainly one of them. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things that I do? In Luke. There are several confessional phrases used of Jesus. In many ways, this shows us the doctrinal content of the early church's profession of faith. Jesus is the Christ. Also about 6 or 7 of those. Jesus is the Son of God, not just Son of Man, Son of God. And Jesus is Lord, which is the early church's baptismal formula. I believe Romans 10, 9 through 13 is an example of that, or the Philippians 2 text. I've done a special topic called the Kerygma, K-E-R-Y-G-M-A, the Kerygma of the early church, which lists all the preaching and acts of Peter, Stephen, and Paul. So we see exactly what the apostles were saying about God and man and sin and Jesus and salvation. So if you want to kind of fill this in, Jesus Christ is Lord, and see its wider theological implications, I hope you'll look at the Kerygma of the early church. Thank you. I've enjoyed being with you.